Hi guys, so welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a complete run through, walkthrough kind of thing of the Among Us Cluedo that I made over on TikTok. This video is probably going to be quite long and possibly a little bit all over the place, so I will put some timestamps either like here on the screen or in the description below so that you can skip to the bit that you're most interested in. So that'll either be just generally how the game's going to work, or if you do want to buy the digital download version that I made, there will be a lot about how to assemble it, how to put the board together if you only have an A4 printer and things like that. But let's just get straight into it. So the first thing to say is that I did turn this into a digital downloadable version that I am selling on Etsy. Again, I will put the link to that in the description for this video, but basically it's just a digital copy of all of the things I'm about to show you in the video. You print it off yourself at home, cut the cards out, assemble the board. If you want to make the playing pieces yourself, you can do that. I did a quick mini tutorial on TikTok. I'll put a link to that in the description as well. And then you can also play this game yourself at home if you want to. In terms of the digital download, I did actually turn it into two different versions. There is a light version and a dark version because, as you will see on a lot of these cards, it includes a lot of black ink. And I know if you're printing this on your own personal printer, your printer's going to struggle to make these look good quality. If you're someone that's going to send it off to get printed by a printer place, I will leave a link to the place that I got these printed off because mine turned out very good quality and it wasn't too expensive to do. But as I said, if you're printing it on yourself at home, I would advise that you get the light pack. And I'll show you the differences between the light and the dark pack. And basically all it is I've changed the background so the little dots are black and the background is white, just so it's not going to kill your printer, but you can still play the game. It's exactly the same with the board as well. I have this here. So this is just a mini printout that I've got. This is the black board, and then this is the light board. So it's a lot less black ink if you're going to be printing it on your own personal printer. Definitely recommend getting the light version, not the dark version. So I'm going to start off by just explaining how the game's going to work and all the things that are included, but as I said, in the digital download you do actually get a thing with the full rules that will probably explain it a little better than I'm going to do here. You also get one of these sheets which is to help you track your guesses throughout the game. I will explain a little bit more about that as we go through. So to start off, the aim of the game is to guess 3 cards, and these are the cards with this backing. They are in 3 separate categories, which are the room, the colour, and the task. And these are the 3 things that everyone has to guess. If you guess this correctly, you win the game. So you have your 3 piles of the room cards, the task cards, and the person cards. And you shuffle these each separately, face down, and then you pick one from each pile and put it to the side. These are what I like to call the imposter cards, and these are the cards that you're trying to guess and like you're keeping track of. Once you've done that, you mix all of these cards together and then dish them out to all of the other players. I like to mix them all together because it means that some person could end up with 3 person cards or 3 room cards rather than one of each separately, which means they have a bit of advantage on knowing which person it is, but they don't have a clue which room it's going to be in. And so I just find it a bit more interesting. If you wanted to simplify it, you probably could keep them all separate and dish them out, but that's just how I like to play it. Once you've dished them out to everyone, if you don't have like an equal number of cards to players, any spare cards that you have left over, you put in the cafeteria, and I'll explain all about the cafeteria a bit later on. So all the players start in the cafeteria. You can use pretty much anything for playing pieces. I did 3D print these cute little Among Us playing pieces, or make them out of polymer clay. As I said, I do have a tutorial on that, but you really don't need to do that, and you can use anything. But yes, everyone starts in the cafeteria. I recommend using just one single 6-sided dice because there aren't actually that many spaces. And so you don't want to be able to move around too quickly, otherwise the game will go really quickly. So you roll the dice and you move however many spaces and you go into a room. One of the main things to note is like what you can't go through rooms. Once you're in a room, that's sort of the end of your turn. You also can't just go out of a room and straight back in the same room. So if you're in a room and you definitely think it's that one, you still on your next turn have to go out go in a different room. You can kind of be tactical about that if you want to try and like work out some of the other things that aren't the room that you don't know yet. That's what I like to do. Every single player should have their own one of these. It's got several grids on it just so that you can reuse it multiple times and stuff. I recommend using a pencil as well so you can rub it off, or if you have a laminator, laminate it and then you can wipe it off, and that's perfect. But on this sheet you have all of the names of the possible person, room and task that the answer could be, and so it's basically a way to keep track. Like if you know for certain, because you have that card in your hand, that it's definitely not green, you can cross it off on here, and then that is basically how the game works. You have to continue getting all your accusations confirmed or denied in order to work out who it is. So on your turn, if you manage to enter a room, you can then make an accusation. You say who you think it was, in what room, and what task they were doing. And the person to the left of you has to say if they think it's true or not. If the person to the left of you has one of the things, or they could have multiple, but if they have one of the things that you just said, they have to opt to show you one of the cards to basically disprove your accusation. They only show the person who's made the accusation, and they only have to show one. So if the person said they thought it was green in reactor doing fixing wires, and the person that to the left had all three of those cards, they only have to show the other person one of those cards. So you can also kind of be tactical about that, and then basically what that person would do on their task sheet is tick it off because they know that it's definitely not that one. And that's just what you continue to do. You go into new rooms to make new accusations, because you can only make an accusation of the certain room if you are in that room on the board. If the player to the left doesn't have any of the cards that you've just said, it just goes on to the player to their left, and it just continues round the whole circle until someone has one of the cards that you just said. If no one has any of the cards you just said, then you know you got it right, and you have to make your way back to the cafeteria to make your final accusation. And I'm going to talk about the cafeteria now. Because the cafeteria is like the main meeting point, it's also the place that you have to make your final accusation. So the one that will actually win you the game is your final accusation in the cafeteria. But if you make the wrong accusation, when you say you're in the cafeteria, this is my final accusation, and you make the wrong accusation, you become a ghost. And I'll talk about more how ghost gameplay works a little bit later on. So all players begin in the cafeteria. It's sort of like the meeting point in the same way in the game. It's like the emergency meeting room, basically. The extra cards that I said that get put in the cafeteria can only be viewed by players once they have left the cafeteria and visited 2 other rooms on the board. They can then make their way back to the cafeteria on their turn, and they get to look at the leftover cards that are there. There is another type of card, which is the Among Us card. This is just an extra pile of cards that will basically help you out in the gameplay. These can be picked up whenever you go into a room, whenever you roll the dice, or if someone moves you into a room with their accusation. That's another thing. If you are playing as green and someone goes in a room and says, I think it's green, they actually move your playing piece into that room. And that's a chance where you can pick up one of these cards to help you out. There are lots of different types of cards in this pile, all do slightly different things. So the first one is the emergency meeting room card, and it's basically all players reset to the cafeteria and you get to make an accusation. This is not your final cafeteria accusation. It can be if you want, but it's basically a free pass to just make any accusation you want and reset everyone, because that's going to be really annoying if you're thinking that it's like down here in lower engine and you've just reset everyone up to the cafeteria. That's a lot of effort for everyone to make their way back down to there to continue making their guesses. So as I'm assuming everyone knows, in Among Us you have sabotages, and so there are 4 sabotage cards here. They will actually help you out quite a lot and sort of hinder everyone else, similar to a sabotage but not quite the same as in the game. So we have lots of different types. We have oxygen sabotage. This is basically roll the dice to fix the O2, and you get to continue rolling the dice and continuing your turn, going in rooms, making accusations until you roll a 3 on the dice. So this is really helpful in basically making everyone else skip a turn, and you just get to keep going, finding out more about which cards might be in that pile. The next one is the electrical sabotage, which is like the lights are off, and this is stop anyone from having their accusation confirmed or denied. So when you make an accusation, as I said, the person to the left normally will show you a card that disproves this. So what this actually means is you can play, any player can play this card, doesn't have to be their turn. You just stop whoever is on their turn making an accusation and stopping them from finding out if what they said is correct or not. So it's almost kind of like they've missed a turn in a way. The next one is comms sabotage, which is no communication. This is just full on stopping anyone from making an accusation, which kind of hinders everyone else, because when someone makes an accusation, you can kind of suss out that they might have those cards or they might not have those cards, so you can make guesses based on that. Whereas this just stops them from making an accusation at all. But this in a way also kind of hinders you a little bit, but it kind of goes both ways. And then the final sabotage card is the reactor sabotage, which is choose a random player and look at one of their cards before returning it. So you can just pick whoever you want. You can say to your friend across the room, I want to look at one of your cards, and they will fan their cards out. You pick a random one, you look at it, and then you give it back to them. And so that's almost basically like a free turn for you, but you didn't have to make an accusation and give away any sneaky information to any of the other players as well. The next type of cards are the vent cards, and if you've ever played Cluedo, you know that they're normally like passageways where you can hop to rooms on the other side of the board without having to go all the way across. And this works similarly to that. All of the vents that are on there are in these cards, but you will only ever get one at a time. So this one will allow you to jump between weapons and navigation. And I'm going to show you on my little mini board kind of how that works. So I'm not sure how well this is going to work, but basically if you are in weapons and you have the weapons to navigation vent, on your turn you can play that card and jump from here to here, or you could be in navigation and jump from there to there. You play that card and it basically stops you from having to roll the dice and possibly not get enough spaces to get to the room you want to get to. So it's a good way to move around the board quickly. The main difference is that you're picking these cards up randomly from the pile rather than always being able to use the vents. Next are the security cameras cards. There are 3 of these in total, but each one of them has a different room on them. So they're different depending on which ones, but obviously you have no control because you're picking from the pile at random. But the way these work is you get to view the card when someone disproves an accusation in any one of these rooms. So the rooms that you have on the bottom, if someone is in one of those rooms and they've just made an accusation, and then someone else is showing them the card to say, no, you are wrong, any other player can play this card, say, I want to also get to look at that card, and then you get to look at it as well. The final cards in these pile are the voting cards. Now, these are actually kind of bad. They don't actually do anything. There are 8 of these in total. They're shuffled into the pile, and then obviously as you go around you pick the cards out. If you pull one of these cards, you just put it on the top of the board, you line them all up, each have a different number of votes on them. When the final one has been pulled out, so there's 8 in total, when all 8 have been pulled out, whoever pulls the final 8th card doesn't have to be the one with 8 votes on it. Any of the cards, as long as all of the others have been pulled out already, you become a ghost. And again, as I said, I'll explain ghost gameplay in a second, but it basically means you're dead and you can't win the game. There's also then 2 options on how you want to continue playing, depending on how quickly the game's going or perhaps how many players there are and things like that. If the game's going quite quickly, you would probably only return 1 card back to the pile and shuffle it. And then again, that means there is only 1 card left to pull out before another player dies. The other option is to put them all back in the pile, shuffle again, and then you're playing again with 8 possible cards coming out, and so you're a lot less likely to die. But what happens when all 7 cards have been pulled and there's only 1 left in the pile is people get a little bit more convinced to take the Among Us cards. So as I said, you can pick up an Among Us card whenever you go into rooms or roll the dice, but you don't have to. If you're worried you're going to pull the final card and die, you don't have to, but that means that everyone kind of stops getting as much help with their guesses and things like that. So it just kind of spices up the game a little bit. So now we're going to be on ghost gameplay. Again, with the playing pieces, it doesn't really matter. I did print the ghosts, but you can just sort of, you'll know that this player is a ghost and so that they play by a different kind of set of rules. But basically, when you're a ghost, You can no longer pick up the Among Us cards that are going to help you out. You can also no longer have your accusation actually confirmed or denied with a card. So you can no longer look at anyone else's cards. If you have any Among Us cards left in your pile, you just you return them to the pile and they get reshuffled in. So you can still make accusations, and the player to the left, as you normally would, will confirm or deny it, but they are only allowed to say, yes, I think it's that, or no, I know that it's not that. You don't actually get to find out why. As it is in Among Us, you no longer have to like roam around in the corridors. On your turn, you are free to jump to a neighbouring room. So on the board, a neighbouring room, if you're in the cafeteria, you can only jump to this room, or medbay, or here. Basically any rooms that are on direct corridors, you can jump to. The same with like here, you can only go into the neighbouring rooms. You can't just jump across the thing because that's definitely not fair. This is just kind of so that if you do die as a player, you're not just sort of sat doing nothing. You still kind of fully can't win the game, but you still get to have a bit of fun and enjoy yourself rather than just sitting on the side on your phone, which I found on our game does happen and it kind of gets a bit boring, which is why I included this. The final thing to mention isn't kind of really gameplay, but it's sort of about the different colours that you can have. So as I said, there are 12 players in the game, and I'm just going to go through all of them. We have pink, orange, purple, brown, dark green, black, white, red, dark blue, light green. This one, in the game, people kind of call this cyan, but this could also be called light blue. It's totally up to you. And yellow, and I think that's all of them. I hope I haven't missed any. But yeah, basically, these are just, it means you can basically play with any colour really, but you don't have to abide by these if you don't have, you can't make your own playing pieces and you just want to use like random objects or like playing pieces from your own original Cluedo that you might have, or like Monopoly or anything. You can totally do that, it really doesn't matter. I just wanted to have the playing pieces because they are pretty cute. I do have one set of polymer clay ones that I made that I will be selling on Etsy, but there are only one of them because sadly I just don't have time to make anymore, but if they're there you can grab them really quick. So that's pretty much it for how to play the game. I'm now going to go through how to assemble the board if you printed this off yourself, because when I did the Harry Potter Monopoly I had hundreds and hundreds of messages of people asking me how can they assemble this board if they only have an A4 printer. So I'm going to go through that now. If you're not planning on buying this and printing this off and you just wanted to learn a bit more how the game plays, that is it. I'll put a timestamp here where you can just skip to the end. So in the digital download version, there will be just a JPEG image of the board if you're gonna get it sent for printing the big size or whatever. If you happen to have a massive printer, lucky you, and you can print like that. But otherwise, you also get a file that looks like this, and it has all of the different sheets that you need to assemble this with only an A4 printer. As I said, the light one is less black ink, so if you don't want to kill your at-home printer, definitely get the light one, as I said. So the main thing to mention with this is on the final slide on the version that you get when you buy the digital download is basically just the bit of navigation that you need, because I understand that this is quite painful to just print out like this. It's not really necessary, and you could quite easily, if you're going to stick this onto a bigger board, just paint the background black and save on ink. It does explain that in the instructions, that if you don't want to waste 2 sheets of paper, you can just print the last sheet and skip these 2, but that's just a little extra thing to note. So the first thing to do when assembling this is obviously to cut them all out just to the printed bit. So I'm going to go and do that now, and then I'll be back to explain how to put it all together. So once you've cut all of the individual pieces out, they should kind of look like this. The final size of the board as a whole is 50 centimeters by 81 centimeters, and this means that each of the little individual squares are about 2 centimeters, which I think was a good size for each of the playing pieces. Obviously, you could scale this down if you didn't want it to be that big and things like that. So if you're going to scale it down, you'd scale it half size and print. When you print, generally you have the option to print 2 sheets onto one, and that would be the best way to do it, scale it down. But I think this is a pretty good size. So the next thing to do is obviously stick all the pieces together. I'm going to show you the way to do it if you don't have a backing card. Obviously the paper itself will be a little bit flimsier. If you can print onto card, definitely would recommend that. Otherwise, my recommendation would be to go either online or to a hobby craft. That's where I get my board for painting the big board, and buy a piece of either just card, or it's called mount board, in A1 size I believe, and then trim it down to the 50 by 81, and then you can just directly stick with either glue or double-sided tape the sheets of paper onto that board, and then you have a full-size board. But the only problem with that is you can't fold it up, which I find annoying, unless you're brave and you score the back of it and then you can fold it up, and that would work perfectly. So I'm hoping this is going to be good and you can actually see, but I'm just going to do sort of one piece so you get the general idea on how to stick it all together, and then I'll try and do like a quick time lapse of me doing the rest of it. But all you need is printed out pieces of paper, some scissors, and just some normal sellotape. If you want to use double-sided tape for sticking it onto an actual board, you can do that too, but this is the simplest way to do it. So you have the pieces of board like this, and most people's instinct would be to just stick it like that, but then you have like sticky tape on your board and it doesn't look as good. So what I would recommend is actually turning the piece of paper over, and luckily all of these are the exact same size, and so they line up pretty well. I would also argue it doesn't really matter too much if you can't get it exactly right, but I'd start off by just cutting a small piece of tape so that you can just get it lined up like that, and then tape it down, and then you just get the rest of your tape and tape down the whole strip, making sure that it's lined up the best you can. I would always argue that I don't think it matters too much if it's not perfect, but that's that, and then turn it over and that piece is perfectly stuck together like that. And you just do that for all the pieces. I would recommend doing strips like this, one at a time, and then sticking the individual strips together. I will try and do a quick time lapse now so you can kind of see how that would work. You've got all of your individual strips, you can stick the board together like this, and you basically just do exactly the same thing on the other side, but down this way instead. I would probably recommend sticking 2 pieces of tape and then taping the whole thing, but you'll see that in the time lapse again here. Is then basically, because you've just taped it all together, it all just completely folds up, so you can unfold it like this, and then you have the full board ready to play, and it's easy to pack away and store. This will work the same if you print it onto card as well. Obviously, as I said, if you wanted to print this onto a board, you would just sort of line the edges with some double-sided tape and stick it onto a hard board if that's how you wanted to play. But you could also just blue tack this to the table whenever you want to use it, and I think this works really well. And it means you can do it at home with an A4 printer and you don't need to send it off to get printed or anything like that. So that is it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you do want to download this and play this, I would really appreciate that. It took me a lot of time and effort to make this game, and I think it's really fun. All the links and stuff are in the description. As I said, if you want to follow me on TikTok or Instagram, the links to that are also in the description. I post on there sometimes, quite a lot actually. But yeah, that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.